The Paris Agreement is the most recent and one of the most historic agreements that countries from around the world have signed to combat climate change.
Y es un acuerdo un poco más inclusivo que se adopta en la COP21 en diciembre del 2015 y posteriormente es ratificado en noviembre del 2016.
Então, o Acordo de Paris ele é uma decisão que não é só sobre as palavras e os textos, ele é sobre as nossas vidas.
The most important thing, of course, about the Paris Agreement is the fact that it talks about global temperature rise, about limiting global temperature increase to well below 2 degrees centigrade and trying to limit it to 1.5 degrees centigrade as well.
Ele é um marco muito importante dentro da governança climática global e agora nesse momento, né, dos 10 anos, chegou a hora, e talvez já tenha até passado, da hora da implementação.
Los objetivos del Acuerdo de París son tres. El primero es mantener la temperatura o articular todas nuestras fuerzas, tanto de comunidad internacional como de comunidades locales y nacionales, para que se mantenga la temperatura a 2 grados centígrados o por debajo de 2 grados centígrados, buscando que se pueda llegar a 1.5 grados centígrados. Segundo, aumentar la capacidad tanto de adaptación como de resiliencia de los países, tanto desarrollados como no desarrollados. Y por último, tiene muy en cuenta la idea de generar esos flujos financieros alrededor de la reducción de las emisiones y pues del calentamiento global.
The 4 pillars of the Paris Agreement are mitigation, adaptation, finance, and transparency and accountability. The first pillar is mitigation. It relates to limiting emissions. Each country sets their own targets on limiting emissions through nationally determined contributions, which are based on their national circumstances and capacities. Progress towards mitigation is tracked through the global stocktake. So every 5 years, the international community that comes together in these conferences looks at how much progress they have made towards the common goals. The second pillar is adaptation. For adaptation, we have the so-called global goal on adaptation, which we find in Article 7 of the Paris Agreement. In Article 7, the Paris Agreement recognizes that climate change is already happening and that adaptation is necessary to protect livelihood and people. The Paris Agreement encourages all parties to engage in planning and implementation of national adaptation plans. Through that, each country determines themselves how they want to adapt to the changing climate. The third pillar of the Paris Agreement is finance. Many developing countries cannot afford investments to cut emissions or adapt to the changing climate. This is due to historical circumstances such as colonialism and extractivism. That is why the Paris Agreement tries to ensure equity through climate finance. Developed countries are obliged to provide climate finance to developing countries. Previous to the Paris Agreement, we had a floor of 100 billion that should be provided by developed countries. At COP29 in Baku, countries came together to decide on the new collective quantified goal on finance, which is higher than the 100 billion. It's now at 300 billion, but it is not at all high enough to meet the needs that developing countries have. The fourth pillar is transparency and accountability. So how do we know if countries actually do what they committed to do? So for that, we have the Enhanced Transparency Framework, short ETF. Reporting happens through biannual transparency reports by each country. So every 2 years, a country submits a report outlining what they have done in their climate action. The Paris Agreement is not only a climate treaty, it is a global survival pact.